In this video I will show you that the Lusso loses $33,000 per year and if the market is already bottoming. What's up YouTube and welcome to a new video. So the GTC4 Lusso is a special car. There's simply nothing out there which offers a V12 and this shooting brake style. And as of August, production is stopped. And this makes the car even more special. Ferrari namely confirmed that there won't be a direct successor. The owners of a Lusso are expected to step in the upcoming SUV. And part of me can follow this train of thought, but there's also a part of me which thinks that this doesn't really make any sense. In any case, it means that the GTC4 Lusso is the last of its kind. And that of course also means that the supply side of the market stops and values might be settling down. This is then also what Jed O'Neill and Jeffrey are interested in. They namely requested this video. And that of course also means that you can request a video. You can simply comment the name of the car for which you would like to see an analysis down below in the comment section. Once there are enough requests for a certain car, I will make a video about it. Don't forget then to subscribe and to click on the notification bell so you get actually notified when your requested analysis goes live. Now then, let's figure out what is happening in the Lusso market, and we will do this with a few steps. In step number 1 we will look at some general numbers and see how the V12 market relates to the V8 market. In step number 2 I will show you then the depreciation numbers, such as the depreciation per year and per 1000 miles driven. In step number 3 we will try to find out where the values of a Lusso will be heading by looking at the FF's depreciation curve. Finally then, at the end of the video, we will compare the rates of the Lusso to the ones of the other cars which I have analyzed on the channel. Let's start now with step number 1 and have a look at the Lusso market. That is appearing now on your screen and you can see that we have the model year on the horizontal axis and the price on the vertical axis. You can also see that the market is split by the V12s and the Ts, so the V8s. Now in total there are 84 cars for sale and 44 of these cars have the V8 and the rest have the V12. And obviously the V12s are more expensive than the V8s. They namely go for a premium of around $30,000. Now when we look at the price points, then we can see that for both models the price variation is large. Prices start at around $180,000 but stretch up all the way to $360,000. And that might just be one of the largest price difference which I've seen on the channel. Now some of this price variation can be explained by the newness of the car. Even though that there's only one new Lusso for sale, there are still a few which are almost brand new and have only a few miles on the clock. Now from this large price variation you can also already see that the depreciation must be high. And I can assure you it is. So let's move on to step number 2, the depreciation numbers. And for this step I inserted the depreciation curves in the graph. And that you can see now on your screen. Now at this very moment the V8 loses on average $33,000 per year and the V12 $44,000 per year. And please note that these are average numbers. So that means that they go for all spec levels. Now even though that these numbers are crazy high, they are not as bad as they seem. Some cars with a comparable price tag, such as the 720S and DB11, have even higher absolute depreciation rates. However, we need to take into account that there are almost no new cars for sale in the Lusso market. You see, the MSRP for a V8 with no options starts at around $260,000 and for the V12 this is around $300,000. Therefore, and especially for the V8s, the depreciation number would have been slightly higher if there would still be some new cars in the market. After all, many cars already took the first large depreciation hit. And if we evaluate the shape of the curves, then we can indeed see that this seems to be the case for the V8 market. You can namely see that the slope of the curve starts to decrease. For the V12 this is less clear, but this results from these cars over here which are priced extremely high. If we look at the majority of the V12 market, then we can see that the drop between model year 2018 and 2017 is much lower than the drop between model year 2020 and 2019. So that was the depreciation per year. But we all know though that Ferraris can be extremely sensitive to mileage. So let's also have a look at the depreciation per 1000 miles driven. Before I show you that though, I first need to show you something else so that you don't get the impression that I'm manipulating this data in some strange way. The graph which is appearing on your screen shows the market's mileage versus price relationship. And if we look at these mileages, then you can see that most of the cars have well below 10,000 miles driven. There are, however, 3 cars which did around 20,000 miles and 1 car which has 50,000 miles on the clock. And that in turn means that for these high mileages, we don't have enough data points to give a reliable estimate for the depreciation per 1,000 miles driven. That's then also why I decided to leave them out of the calculation for that number. Now after this administrative message, you're up to date on the data cleaning, so let's have a look at the curves. Those are now appearing on your screen and you can see that the current average depreciation per 1,000 miles is $15,500 for the V12 and $9,900 for the V8. And there is no way around it. These are high numbers. The Aston Martin DB11, which has the second highest depreciation rate on the channel, sits for example at around the $10,000 mark. On the flip side though, you can see clearly that it is this initial hit which pushes up the number. After around 2,000 miles, the depreciation decreases significantly. What is also interesting here, by the way, is the overlap in prices between the V8 and the V12. For let's say between 2 and 4,000 miles, you can get either a V8 or a V12. They of course will differ in spec level, but I think that this is an interesting development. Alright, we know now how much the Lussos lose on average, but common sense tells us that in the future, this depreciation rate will be lower. And we already saw a little bit of this in the data. But how fast will these values settle? Or, in other words, is it now a smart moment to enter the Lusso market? And to figure that out, I could of course run the market through the forecasting model. However, let's keep things simple. We already have the depreciation of the FF, the Lusso's predecessor. So let's insert that curve in the graph. Now before we continue, please remember to support the channel by smashing that like button. And now a few things become clear. First, we can see that it is quite likely that the curve of the FF shows the trajectory of future FF values. It doesn't take too much imagination to connect the lines. True, we only have 1 point in model year 2016, but based on the other points, it still seems like a likely trajectory. And this is not always the case. When I make these plots, I see often that the successors go for a premium compared to the predecessors. Think for example about the different 911 generations. In the future, that might be the case of course here as well. But as of now, nothing indicates that there will be a large premium for the Lussos. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. We can namely see that it are only the oldest model years of the Lussos which are entering the beginning of the bottoming phase. Before that, it is basically a free fall. If you care about values, then it is probably the best to go for a FF from model year 2012 or 2013. They clearly done their money. Now when you look at this depreciation curve, you might think that the depreciation behavior of the Lusso is quite terrible. But this is not the case. Let me explain. The absolute numbers behind the curve are quite daunting. But if you look at the relative numbers, then it's actually not so bad. And that I will show you with the depreciation leaderboard. This leaderboard namely compares most of the cars which I've analyzed on the channel based on their relative average depreciation rate. And this is appearing now on your screen, and you can see that we have the age on the horizontal axis and the depreciation on the vertical axis. If we first find the V8, then we can see that it scores way above the trend line with a rate of minus 11.8% per year. And this is similar to the Cayman 718 GTS. It is a lot less than the AMG GTR and Aston Martin DB11. However, we need to remember that those markets contained more new cars. So what about the V12? Well, if we find that car in this graph, then we can see that it depreciates at a relative average rate of minus 13% per year. It scores then also on par with many other cars such as the Macan and the 991 Turbo. And with that out of the way, let's wrap up this video and conclude. The absolute depreciation rate on a Lusso is extremely high. The story however changes when we look at the relative rates. We just saw that these are actually in line with other cars. And that is perhaps the problem of the Lusso. In line with other cars. We are talking about the Ferrari here, and they are known for their strong residuals. And for the Lusso this clearly doesn't hold. It namely shows numbers which are similar to other cars. It is just that because they are so expensive, the absolute rates are mind-blowingly high. By looking at the FF market though, we could see that these high values start to settle down after around 7 years. So if you care about values, then it's probably smarter to shop for an older FF. And on that note, we arrived at the end of the video. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please remember to support the channel by smashing that like button. Also, if you like this kind of analysis but would have liked to see it for a different car, then I recommend that you browse through my channel. I namely already covered many car models. If you can't find the model you are searching for, then you can also comment it down below in the comment section. Once there are enough requests for a certain car, I will make a video about it. Now, as always, a huge thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next week for a new video.